Thief of Time, Part 15. You were the first, said Lutze. You basically created the whole business. Innovative, you were. That was then, said Ronnie Soak. It's all changed now. Not like it used to be, agreed Lutze. Take death, said Ronnie. Impressive, I'll grant you, and who doesn't look good in black, but after all, death. What is death? Just a big sleep, said Lutze. Just a big sleep, said Ronnie Soak. As for the others, war. If war's so bad, why do people keep doing it? Practically a hobby, said Lutze. He began to roll himself a cigarette. Practically a hobby, repeated Ronnie with a nod. As for famine and pestilence, well, enough said Lutze sympathetically. Exactly, I mean, famine's a fearful thing, obviously. In an agricultural community, but you got to move with the times, said Lutze, putting the roll up in his mouth. You put your finger right on it. You've got to move with the times. I mean, does your average city person fear famine? No, he thinks food grows in shops, said Lutze. He was beginning to enjoy this. He had 800 years' worth of experience in steering the thoughts of his superiors, and most of them had been intelligent. He decided to strike out a little. Fire. Now, city folk really fear fire, he said. That's new. Your primitive villager, he reckoned fire was a good thing, didn't he? Kept the wolves away. If it burned down his hut, well, logs and turf are cheap enough. But now he lives in a street of crowded wooden houses and everyone's cooking in their rooms. Well? Ronnie glared. Fire? Fire? Just a demigod. Some little runt of a thief pinches the flame from the gods and suddenly he's immortal? You call that training and experience? A spark leaped from his fingers and ignited the end of Lutze's cigarette. As for gods, Johnny-come-lately is the pack of 'em, said Lutze quickly. Right. People started worshipping them because they were afraid of me, said Ronnie. Did you know that? No, really, said Lutze innocently. But now Ronnie's sacked. That was then, of course, he said. It's different now. I'm not what I used to be. No, obviously not, said Lutze soothingly. But it's all a matter of how you look at it. Am I correct? Now, supposing a man, that is to say, anthropomorphic personification, said Ronnie Soak, but I've always preferred the term avatar. Lutze's brow wrinkled. You fly around a lot, he said. That would be aviator. Sorry. Well, supposing an avatar, thank you, who was perhaps a bit of ahead of his time thousands of years ago, well, supposing he took a good look around now, he might just find the world is ready for him again. Lutze waited. My abbot, now he reckons you are the bee's knees, he said for a little reinforcement. Does he? Said Ronnie Soak suspiciously. Bee's knees, cat's pajamas, and dog's elbows, Lutze finished. He's written scrolls and scrolls about you. Says you are hugely important in understanding how the universe works. Yeah, but he's just one man, said Ronnie Soak with all the sullenness and reluctance of someone cuddling a lifetime's huge snit like a favorite soft toy. Technically yes, said Lutze, but he's an abbot, and brainy. He thinks such big thoughts he needs a second lifetime just to finish them off. Let a lot of peasants fear famine, I say, but someone like you should aim for quality. And you look at cities now. Back in the old days, there were just heaps of mud bricks with names like and ugh, and these days there's millions of people living in cities. Very, very complicated cities. Just, you think about what they really, really fear. And fear, well, fear is belief. There was another long pause. Well, all right. Ronnie began. Of course, they won't be living in him very long, because by the time the Grey people have finished taking them to pieces to see how they work, there won't be any belief left. My customers do depend on me, Ronnie Soak mumbled. What customers? That's Soak speaking, said Lutze. That's not the voice of chaos. Ha, said Chaos bitterly. You haven't told me yet how you worked that one out. Because I got more than 3 brain cells in your vein, and you painted your actual name back to front on your card whether you knew it or not, and a dark window is a mirror, and K and S are still recognizable in a reflection even when they're back to front, thought Lutze. But that wasn't a good way forward. It was just obvious, he said. You sort of shine through. It's like putting a sheet over an elephant. You might not be able to see it, but you're sure the elephant is still there. Chaos looked wretched. I don't know, he said. It's Been a long time." "Oh, and I thought you said you were number one," said Lutze, deciding on a new approach. "Sorry, still. I suppose it's not your fault you've lost a few skills over the centuries, what with one thing and—" "Lost skills," snapped Chaos, waving a finger under the sweeper's nose. "I could certainly take you to the cleaners, you little maggot." "What with dangerous yogurt," said Lutze, climbing off the cart. Chaos leaped down after him. "Why do you get off talking to me like that?" he demanded. Lutze glanced up. "Corner of Merchant and Broadway," he said. "So what?" Chaos roared. He tore off his striped apron and his white cap. He seemed to grow in size, darkness evaporating off of him like smoke. Lutze folded his hands and grinned. "Remember who? Remember Rule 1, he said. "Rules? Rules? I'm Chaos." "Who was the first?" said Lutze. "Yes, creator and destroyer. Right. Apparently complicated, apparently patternless behavior that nevertheless has a simple deterministic explanation and is key to new levels of understanding of the multidimensional universe. You better believe it." "What?" "Got to move with the times, mister. Got to keep up," shouted Lutze, excitedly hopping from foot to foot. "You are what people think you are, and they've changed you. I hope you're good at sums." "You can't tell me what to be," Chaos roared. "I'm Chaos." "I don't think so." "Well, your big combat ain't gonna happen now that the auditors have taken over. The rules, mister, that's what they are. They're cold, dead rules." Silver lightning flickered in the walking cloud that had once been Ronnie. Then cloud, cart, and horse vanished. "Could have been worse, I suppose," said Lutze to himself. "Not a very bright lad, really, possibly a bit too old-fashioned." He turned around and found a crowd of auditors watching him. There were dozens of them. He sighed and grinned his sheepish little grin. He had just about had enough for one day. "Well, I expect you have heard of Rule 1, right?" he said. That seemed to give them pause. One said, "We know millions of rules, human." "Billions and trillions," said another. You can't attack me," said Lutze, "because of Rule 1. The nearest auditor went into a huddle. It must involve gravitation. No quantum effects, obviously. Logically, there cannot be a Rule 1, because at that point there would be no concept of plurality. But if there is not a Rule 1, can there be any other rules? If there is no Rule 1, where is Rule 2? There are millions of rules. They cannot fail to be numbered. Wonderful, thought Lutze. All I have to do is wait until their heads explode. But an auditor stepped forward. It looked more wild-eyed than the others, and it was much more unkempt. It was also carrying an axe. "We do not have to discuss this," it snapped. "We must think. This is nonsense, and we will not discuss it." "But what is a rule?" an auditor began. "You will call me Mr. White." "Mr. White, what is Rule 1? "I'm not glad you asked that question," screamed Mr. White and swung the axe. The body of the auditor crumbled in around the blade, dissolving into floating motes that dispersed in a fine cloud. "Anyone else got questions?" said Mr. White, raising the axe again. One or two auditors, not yet entirely in tune with current developments, opened their mouths to speak and very quickly shut them again. Lutze took a few steps back. He prided himself on an incredibly well-honed ability to talk his way in and out of everything, but that rather depended on the passably sane entity being involved at the other end of the dialogue. Mr. White turned to Lutze. "What are you doing out of your place, organic?" But Lutze was overhearing another whispered conversation. It was coming from the other side of a nearby wall and went something like this. "Who cares about the damn wording? Accuracy is important, Susan. There's a precise description on the little map inside the lid. Look. And you think that will impress anyone? Please, things should be done properly. Oh, give it to me then." Mr. White advanced on Lutze, axe raised. "It is forbidden to," he began. "Eat, good grief. Eat a delicious fondant sugar cream infused with delightfully rich and creamy raspberry filling wrapped with mysterious dark chocolate. You grey bastards." A shower of small objects pattered down on the street. Several of them broke open. Lutze heard a whine, or rather a silence, caused by the absence of a whine he'd grown used to. "Oh no, I'm winding down." Trailing smoke, but looking more like a milkman again, albeit one that had just delivered to a blazing house, Ronnie Soak stormed into his diary. "Who does he think he is?" he muttered, gripping the spotless edge of a counter so hard that the metal bent. "Oh, yes, they just toss you aside, but when they want you to make a comeback..." Under his fingers the metal went white hot and then dripped. I got customers. People depend on me. It might not be a glamorous job, but people will always need milk." He clapped a hand to his forehead. When the molten metal touched his skin, the metal evaporated. The headache was really bad. He could remember the time when there was only him. It was hard to remember because, well, there was nothing. No color, no sound, no pressure, no time, no spin, no light, no life. Just chaos. And the thought arose, do I want that again? The perfect order that goes with changelessness. More thoughts were following that one, like little silvery eels in his mind. He was, after all, a horseman, and had been ever since the time the people in the mud cities on the baking plains put together some hazy idea of something that had existed before anyone else. And a horseman picks up the noises of the world. The Mud City people and the Skin Tent people, they'd known instinctively that the world swirled perilously through complex and uncaring multiverses, that life was lived a mirror's thickness from the cold of space and the gulfs of night. They knew that everything they called reality, the web of rules that made life happen, was a bubble on the tide. They feared old chaos, but now... He opened his eyes and looked down at his dark, smoking hand. To the world in general, he said, "Who am I now?" Lutze heard his voice speed up from nothing. "No, you're wound up again," said a young woman in front of him. She stood back, giving him a critical look. Lutze, for the first time in 800 years, felt he'd been caught doing something wrong. It was that kind of expression, searching, rummaging around his head. "You'll be Lutze then," said Susan. "I'm Susan Stohellit, no time for explanations. You've been out for, well, not for long. We have to get Lobsang to the glass clock. Are you any good? Lobsang thinks you're a bit of a fraud." "Only a bit? I'm surprised." Lutze looked around. "What happened here?" The street was empty, except for the ever-present statues, but scraps of silver paper and colored wrappers littered the ground, and across the wall behind him was a long splash of what looked very much like chocolate icing. "Some of them got away," said Susan, picking up what Lutze could only hope was a giant icing syringe. "Mostly they fought with one another. Would you try to tear someone apart just for coffee cream?" Lutze looked into those eyes. After 800 years, you learn how to read people. And Susan was a story that went back a very long way. She probably even knew about Rule 1 and didn't even care. This was someone to treat with respect. But you couldn't let even someone like her have it all their own way. "The kind with the coffee bean on top, or the ordinary kind?" he said. "The kind without the coffee bean, I think," said Susan, holding his gaze. No, I don't think I would," said Lutze. "But they are learning," said a woman's voice behind the sweeper. "Some resisted. We can learn. That's how humans became humans." Lutze regarded the speaker. She looked like a society lady who had just had a really, really bad day inside of a threshing machine. "Can I just be clear here?" he said, staring from one woman to the other. "You've been fighting the grey people with chocolate." "Yes," said Susan, peering around the corner. "It's a sensory explosion. They lose control of their morphic field. Can you throw it all?" "Good. Unity, give him as many chocolate eggs as he can carry. The secret is to get them to land hard so that there's lots of shrapnel." "And where is Lobsang?" said Lutze. "Him? You could say that he's with us in spirit." There were blue sparkles in the air. "Growing pains, I think," Susan added. Centuries of experience once again came to Lutze's aid. "He always looked like a lad who needed to find himself," he said. "Yes, and it came as a good bit of a shock. Let's go." Death looked down at the world. Timelessness had reached the rim now and was expanding into the universe at the speed of light. The Discworld was a sculpture in crystal. Not an apocalypse. There had been plenty of those. Small apocalypses, not the full shilling at all. Fake apocalypses, apocryphal apocalypses. Most of them had been back in the old days, when the world, as in end of the world, was often objectively no wider than a few villages and perhaps a clearing of the forest. And those little worlds had in fact ended, but there had always been somewhere else. There had always been a horizon to start with. The fleeing refugees would find that the world was bigger than they thought. A few villages in the clearing. How could they have been so stupid? Now they knew it was a whole island. Of course, there was that horizon again. The world had now run out of horizons. As Death watched, the sun stopped in its orbit and its light became duller and redder. He sighed and nudged Binky. The horse stepped forward in a direction that could not be found on any map, and the sky was full of grey shapes. There was a ripple in the ranks of auditors as the pale horse trotted forward. One drifted toward Death and hung in the air a few feet away. It said, "Should you not be riding out?" "Do you speak for all?" "You know the custom," said the voice in Death's mind. "Among us one speaks for all." "What is being done is wrong." "It is not your business." "Nevertheless, we are all answerable." "The universe will last forever," said the voice. "Everything preserved, ordered, understood, lawful, filled, changeless. A perfect world. Finished." "No." "It will all end one day in any case." "This is too soon. There is unfinished business." "And that is?" "Everything." And with a flash of light, a figure clothed all in white appeared, holding a book in one hand. It looked from Death to the endlessly massing ranks of auditors and said, "Sorry, is this the right place?" Two auditors were measuring the number of atoms on a paving slab. It existed, and therefore it had to be measured. They looked up at the movement. "Good afternoon," said Lucy. "May I draw up your attention to the notice my assistant is holding up?" Susan held up a sign. It read, "Mouth must be open by order," and Lucy unfolded his hands. There was caramel in each one, and he was a good shot. The mouth shut, the faces went impassive. Then there was a sound somewhere between a purr and a wail which disappeared into the ultrasonic. And then the auditors dissolved gently, first going fuzzy around the edges as the process accelerated, swiftly becoming a spreading cloud. "Hand-to-mouth fighting," said Lucy. "Why doesn't it happen to humans?" "It nearly does," said Susan, and when they stared at her she blinked and said, "To stupid and indulgent humans, anyway." "You don't have to concentrate to stay the same shape," said Unity. "And that was the last of the caramels, by the way." "No, there are 6 in one of B&W's gold selections," said Susan. 3 have got white chocolate, cream in dark chocolate, and 3 have got whipped cream in milk chocolate. They're the ones in the silver wrap. Look, I just happen to know things, all right? Let's keep going without mentioning chocolate. "You have no power over us," said the auditor. "We are not alive." "But you are demonstrating arrogance, pride, and stupidity. These are emotions, I would say. They are signs of life." Excuse me," said the shining figure in white, "but you're all alone here." "Excuse me." "Yes," said Death. "What is it?" This is the apocalypse, yes?" said the shining figure petulantly. "We are talking." "Yes, right, but is it the apocalypse, the actual end of the actual world?" "No," said the auditor. "Yes," said Death, "it is." "Great," said the figure. "What?" said the auditor. "What?" said Death. The figure looked embarrassed. "Well, not great, obviously not great as such, but it's what I'm here for. It's what I'm for, really." It held up a book. I've got the place marked ready. Wow, it's been, so long." Death glanced at the book. The cover and all the pages were made of iron. Realization dawned. "You are the angel clothed all in white of the iron book from the prophecies of Tobran, am I correct?" "That's right." The pages clanged as the angel hurriedly thumbed through them. "And it's clothed by the way of, if you don't mind, clothed. Just a detail, I know, but I'd like to get it right." "What is happening here?" the auditor growled. "I don't know how to tell you this," said Death, ignoring the interruption, "but you are not official." The pages stopped clanking. "What do you mean?" the angel said suspiciously. "The Book of Tobran has not been considered official church dogma for hundreds of years. The prophet brother revealed that the whole chapter was a metaphor for a power struggle within the early church. It is not included in the revised version of the Book of Om, as determined by the convocation of E. Not at all? I'm sorry. I've been thrown out, just like the damn rabbits and the big syrupy things. Yes. Even the bit where I blow the trumpet? Oh, yes. You're sure? Always. But you are death, and this is the apocalypse, right? Said the angel, looking wretched. So therefore... Unfortunately, however, you are no longer a formal part of the proceedings. Out of the corner of his mind, Death was observing the auditor. Auditors always listened when people spoke. The more people spoke, the closer to consensus every decision came, and the less responsibility anyone had. But the auditor was showing signs of impatience and annoyance. Emotions, and emotions made you alive. Death knew how to deal with the living. The angel looked around at the universe. Then, what am I supposed to do? He wailed. This is what I've been waiting for thousands of years. He stared at the iron book. Thousands of dull, boring, wasted years, he mumbled. Have you quite finished? Said the auditor. One big scene, that's all I had. That was my purpose. You wait, you practice, and then you just edit it out because brimstone is no longer a fashionable color? Anger was now infused in the bitterness in the angel's voice. No one told me, of course. He glared at the rusted pages. It ought to be pestilence next, he muttered. Am I late, then? Said a voice in the night. A horse walked forward. It gleamed unhealthily, like a gangrenous wound just before the barber surgeon would be called in with his hacksaw for a quick trim. I thought you weren't coming. I didn't want to, Pestilence oozed. But humans do get such interesting diseases, I'd rather like to see how weasels turn out too. One crusted eye winked at Death. You mean measles? Said the angel. Weasels, I'm afraid, said Pestilence. People are really getting careless with this bio-artificing. We're talking boils that really bite. 2 of you will not suffice, snarled the auditor in their heads. A horse walked out of the darkness. Some toast racks had more flesh. I've been thinking, said a voice. Maybe things are worth putting up a fight for. And they are, said Pestilence, looking around. Salad cream sandwiches. Just can't beat them. That tang of permitted emulsifiers? Marvelous. Ha, you're famine then, said the angel of the iron book. It fumbled with the heavy pages once again. Wait, what is this nonsense of salad cream? Shouted the auditor. Anger, thought Death. A powerful emotion. Do I like salad cream? Said a voice in the dark. A second female voice replied. No, dear, it gives you hives. The horse of war was huge and red, and the heads of the dead warriors hung from the saddle horn, and Mrs. War was hanging on to War grimly. If you live in a country where the conversation calls for mayonnaise, don't ask, just don't. All 4. Bingo, said the angel of the book. So much for the convocation of E. War had a woolly scarf around his neck. He looked sheepishly at the other horsemen. He's not to strain himself, said Mrs. War sharply, and you're not to let him do anything dangerous. He's not as strong as he thinks, and he gets confused. So the gang is all here, said the auditor. Smartness, Death noticed, and self-satisfaction. There was a clanging as of metal pages. The angel of the book was looking puzzled. Actually, I don't think that's entirely correct, it said. No one paid it any attention. Off you go on your little pantomime, said the auditor. And now irony and sarcasm, thought Death. They must be picking it up from the ones down in the world, all the little things that go to make up a personality. He looked along the row of the horsemen. They caught his eye, and there were some almost imperceptible nods from Famine and Pestilence. War turned in the saddle and spoke to his wife. Right now, dear, I'm not confused at all. Could you get down, please? Remember what happened when Miss War began. Right now, please, my dear, said War, and this time his voice, which was still calm and polite, had echoes of steel and bronze. Oh, Mrs. War was suddenly flustered. That's just how you used to talk when... She stopped, blushed happily for a moment, and slid off the horse. War nodded at Death. And now you must all go and bring terror and destruction and so forth, said the auditor. Correct? Death nodded. Floating in the air above him, the angel of the iron book slammed the pages back and forth in an effort to find his place. Exactly. Only while it is true we have to ride out, Death added, drawing his sword. It doesn't say anywhere against whom. Your meaning, hissed the auditor. But now there was a flicker of fear. Things were happening that it didn't understand. Death grinned. In order to fear, you had to be a me. Don't let anything happen to me. That was the song of fear. He means, said War, that they asked us all to think about whose side we're really on. 4 swords were drawn, blazing along their edges like flame. 4 horses charged. The angel of the Iron Book looked down at Mrs. War. Excuse me, do you have a pencil? Susan peered around the corner into Artificer's Street and groaned. It's full of them, and I think they've gone mad. No, they have not gone mad. They are being auditors. They are taking measurements, assessing and standardizing where necessary. They are taking up the paving slabs now. Yes, I suspect it is because they are the wrong size. We do not like irregularities. What the hell is a wrong size for a slab of rock? Any size which is not the average size, I'm sorry. The air around Susan flashed blue. She was very briefly aware of a human shape, transparent, spinning gently, which vanished again. But a voice in her ear said, Nearly strong enough. Can you get to the end of the street? Yes, are you sure? You couldn't do anything to the clock before. Before, I was not me. A movement in the air made Susan look up. The lightning bolt that had stood rigid over the dead city had gone. The clouds were rolling like ink poured into water. There were flashes within them, sulphurous, yellows, and red. The 4 horsemen are fighting the other auditors, Lobsang supplied. Are they winning? Lobsang did not answer. I said, it's hard for me to say. I can see everything that could be. Chaos listened to history. There were new words. Wizards and philosophers had found chaos, which is chaos with his hair combed and a tie on, and had found in the epitome of disorder a new order undreamed of. There are different kinds of rules. From the simple comes the complex, and from the complex comes a different kind of simplicity. Chaos is order in a mask. Chaos. Not dark, ancient chaos left behind by the evolving universe, but new, shiny chaos dancing in the heart of everything. The idea was strangely attractive, and it was a reason to go on living. Ronnie Soak adjusted his cap. Oh yes, there was one last thing. That the milk was always lovely and fresh. Everyone remarked on that. Of course, being everywhere at 7 in the morning was no trouble to him. If even the Hogfather could climb down every chimney in the world in one night, doing a milk round for the most of the city in 1 second was hardly a major achievement. Keeping things cool was, however. But there he had been lucky. Mr. Soak walked into the ice room where his breath turned to fog in the frigid air. Churns were stacked across the floor, sparkling on the outside. Vats of butter and cream were piled on shelves that glistened with ice. Rack after rack of eggs were just visible through the frost. He'd been planning to add the ice cream business in the summer. It was such an obvious step. Besides, he needed to use up the cold. A stove was burning in the middle of the floor. Mr. Soak always bought good coal from the dwarves, and the iron plates were glowing red. The room, one felt, ought to be an oven, but there was a gentle sizzling on the stove as frost battled with heat. With the stove roaring, the room was merely an icebox. Without the stove, Ronnie opened the door of a white-rimmed cupboard and smashed at the ice within it with his fist. Then he reached inside. What emerged, crackling with blue flame, was a sword. It was a work of art, the sword. It had imaginary velocity, negative energy, and positive cold. Cold, so cold that it met heat coming the other way and took on something of its nature. A burning cold. There has never been anything so cold as this since before the universe began. In fact, it seemed to Chaos, everything since then had merely been lukewarm. Well, I'm back, he said. The 5th horseman rode out, and a faint smell of cheese followed with him.